everyone, and welcome back to Scylla's Podcats, or welcome to Scylla's Podcats, and today we have once more a little review planned. The book that I'm talking about is a book that I thankfully got an e-arc for, and as of right now the book is also only available in as a digital copy because it is self-published, and the book that I'm talking about, which I very much loved, and I want to thank the author again for giving me the access to a review copy, is Imago, a Dystopia Gothic, by Matthew Zakharuk. The book is fairly short. I think it's like about 350 pages, give or take. Since I had an e-arc, the pages were all over the place anyway, so we're just not going to bother talking about how many pages I read. But I absolutely loved it. It was fantastic. If any of the words dystopia and gothic, and also monsters, make you vaguely interested, this is the right place for you. So, the story of Imago, right? The story of this wonderful dystopian gothic that I got to read, starts more or less with our main character, Ada Calinescu, who gets to be invited to the Trésor Institute in her hometown, which she hasn't really seen for a long while because she hasn't lived there for a long while. And she gets invited there in order to, participate, be a student, make a nice thesis happen. Specifically with one professor who gets mentioned over and over again as this kind of like well-versed individual in magical glyphs, which is something that Ada wants to talk about. There's a few things that are slightly problematic about this though, which among other things is the fact that Ada's family, specifically her mother and father, were convicted as criminals who tried to blow up things. So obviously she's partially under watch by the government, the government institute, I would say, which is also just called the authority, capital A, in order to see how well she actually behaves. If that sounds vaguely dystopian to you already, don't worry, it gets worse. So the setting of the book is the first interesting thing that I want to talk about when it comes to Imago, and I'm going to try to make this as spoiler-free as possible, by the way, so all of you can go enjoy it, and also give Matthew some love because they deserve it. But the setting of Imago is very isolated on purpose. We have essentially, I think, 3 or 4 named places, specifically. We don't have a map, which in this case I'm actually really glad about, because it made it so much more harder to imagine where exactly the characters were. And those places that get mentioned, 2 of which we kind of see. The first one is a city that Ada is currently living in, with her grandmother, who is very much unhappy with the situation that family is currently living in, and the other city that, we get to experience somewhat is the city she returns to in order to study at the Trésor University, or Institute, however you want to call it. The way the travel works in this case is via a train, and it's also made explicitly clear that most of the book is set in darker/colder months, because if I remember that correctly, the first train ride is through the snow, essentially, right? As I said, there's no maps, there's no real indication as to where exactly we are, though the book has a very distinct feeling of, like, Soviet Union/German combination. There's a lot of words in how, places are named that are distinctly German, which is something I should know because I am German. I do understand German. It is what it is. And I really enjoyed that mixture that nonetheless didn't really fully give away where exactly we were and what exactly we were fully taking, like, inspiration from. And the reason I liked it so much, even though I usually enjoy it when books give me more information about the places that they're set in, is because the entire point, in my opinion, or like one of the big points of Imago, is that the authority controls any and all information citizens of this country have available to them. And this isn't just, this isn't just about one thing. This is persistent in every single, living space they have, from where exactly they are, to how exactly the history of this place came to pass, even down to the magic system, which is something I will also be talking about in this review, because I really, really enjoyed how Matthew did that. And so, in order to evoke this feeling of isolation and this feeling of not knowing where exactly we are and what exactly is happening, it's vital, in my opinion, to create places that feel just as isolating as they're supposed to feel. Because, again, we are living, or like the main character, Ada, is living in a society that doesn't want its citizens to know anything beyond the, basic information necessary in order to function. And, of course, in order to fall in line. As you might have guessed from this, Imago also heavily deals with police brutality, with state manipulation, with forced institutionalization based on the information the state gives someone about you. Every single one of these people also has several files. There's several instances in which it's made abundantly clear that the authority controls every living aspect you could possibly have. There's apparently ways that characters are supposed to be dressing, which is also very interesting because Ada herself is not what I would call a cis woman. She, there's several instances that very specifically need to happen in the book where, for example, she starts wearing men's clothing instead of women's clothing because it makes her feel a lot better, it makes her feel a lot safer. But this binary that the authority is giving people to live with extends even beyond the, well, you should have to be a man and you should have to be a woman. You also, for example, need specific papers in order to marry someone from the same sex as you are. Because your first and foremost duty, of course, is to produce more citizens for the authority, which is impossible if, for example, two people get together and start living together when both of them do not have the genitalia necessary in order to create a child like that. So there's a lot of that happening in the book as well, and the way it's done is so insidious and honestly, in my opinion, so well done. I really, really enjoy the way that Matthew gave us the world building of this place, which is in fits and spurts, and there's a lot of things that are more implied than they are explicitly shown on page, because again, even the characters imply them to a certain degree. There's always also this amount of fear that if you start sharing something with the reader, aka a presence that is not necessarily there in the novel, the characters are going to get into trouble with the authority. At least that was my experience, and I really enjoyed that. Because it felt like Ada herself was trying to tell as little incriminating information to a, non-specific third party as possible. Because despite the fact that she is very obviously not happy to be living in a society such as this, she does live in that society, and she has to live with that society. And so to a certain degree, at least, I would say roughly for the first half of the book at the very least, she tries to fit in. And not in the way that, she tries everyone to like her or something like that. She just tries not to raise her head too much, if that makes sense. And it was brilliant. And now I really have to talk about the magic system, I'm sorry. Because the magic system is also very intrinsically tied to both the authority, but also to the binary system that the authority kind of like imposes onto everyone. Because the main way that the magic works in this world is through so-called glyphs. And Ada is studying these glyphs at the Trésor University, or Trésor Institute, partially for her thesis, which has to do with translating a very old book of very old glyphs, a lot of which existed before the authority came into power. And so obviously we have to sit through a few courses of her doing exactly that in university. And now here is where I was really, really intrigued by the book. Because I like to see how different authors handle different magic systems. I think that's very fascinating, and I think it tells you a lot about the author and what they valued in their work. And in this case, it really, really did. So first of all, as I said, the magic is mostly, created via glyphs. There's not really any instances of someone like saying a magic spell out loud and it working. It seems to be connected to a writing system, at least that's what we learn throughout the book. But not only that, but the writing is also very peculiar in how the glyphs are basically, you know, made up of, like what parts are made up of it. Which suggests to me that what Matthew was trying to do was trying to create a language that works both in the real world as well as in a magical system, which I always think is really cool. And the reason I say that the binary system is also, you know, very important to this is because there is a very precise system, the authority claims, where masculine and feminine ends of words, of glyphs in this case specifically, play together in order to get a certain result. And there's a very big discussion about neuter endings, which, in case you didn't know, is a third grammatical gender that currently, as of right now, doesn't really exist in English anymore, but exists in a lot of languages that have masculine and feminine genders, such as German, actually. And the discussions surrounding the magic system, the discussions surrounding the glyphs and how they are presented to you through a binary system with our main character who defies the binary in certain ways, also defying the magic system. It's just, the symbolism is beautiful. And not only that, but it's also so intrinsically tied to the fact that everything within this book, everything that happens within this book, apart from the scenes that clearly break free from this binary and from this very rigid society, everything in this book is created or controlled by the authority, including the magic system. Because the way that the magic system is taught in the Tresor Institute, where Ada is through a very rigid system that she also defies at some point, especially when she starts translating this one book for real, basically, right? Where she starts going like, no, I know how it works instinctively, but someone else is telling me that I'm doing it wrong. Someone else from the authority, more or less, or from a, you know, society that is clasped within the authority's grasp, is telling me something different about what I am finding out about this. Because the entire point of the magic system is that it has to be controlled by the authority, because if the authority doesn't control the history behind the magic system, as well as then also the magic system itself, they lose their authority, haha, over the citizens of this place. And I really enjoy that. I particularly enjoyed in this book because it gives the magic system this rigidity, but then also addresses, somewhat implicitly but still, why this rigidity of a magic system exists in the first place. And it is precisely because a third party, in this case the authority, capital A, benefits from a magic system being very rigid and confined within itself, which is very funny, because that's also how language works. More often than not, language changes, at least to a certain degree, evolve from people, or well, there's a lot to language changes, let's just say that, but like for the brevity of things, there is a particular way in which a, you know, position of power will try to install specific language changes in order to legitimately control an entire, you know, generation, an entire society, really, through language. And the fact that language and magic in Imago are so intrinsically intertwined because of the way the magic works, but also because of the way the authority tells everyone the magic works, is just beautiful to me. I love symbolism when it works like that. It's so nice. The book also does a lot with body horror, with monstrous images, with the question of who exactly is the monster if we're living in a society like that, and so on and so forth, which is beautiful. I love monster imagery, I love monstrous images, I love monstrous people, especially if it's queer. Just feed me all of that. Thank you very much. Loved that for Imago as well. I also really enjoyed the writing style of it because it's very abstract in some way, specifically when the magic is involved, which again I really loved because the way that Ada is viewing the magic is very different from how the authority is viewing it, again. Because she grasps it on an instinctual level that almost feels hallucinatory in nature, if I may say so. And I love that. It's such an interesting contrast to the magic lessons that she has to sit through at the Tresor Institute, and how they interact with each other and how they contradict each other, which is essential to this novel because, once again, it is essentially a character defying a very rigid system created by the people in power, for the people in power, and essentially no one else. And I really love that. It also has this aspect of, you know, finding forgotten magic, as in finding forgotten folklore that has been eradicated by the people in power because, again, they want to suppress their citizens into doing what they want them to do and not what the citizens might want to do. Everything is in there. It's fantastic. I loved it. Trigger warnings, of course. I didn't really go into that much detail, I think, but of course with the whole idea of a dystopian fiction in which the characters are controlled by some sort of authority, some sort of party that is trying to keep them under wraps, there's a lot of police brutality, there's a lot of forced institutionalization, there's a lot of discrimination in various ways, really. The way that Imago is made up of, I do also think that, you know, body horror is definitely a trigger warning that people should receive. And yeah, I'm gonna have to see, I don't remember right now if the author has any trigger warnings on his website. I'm gonna check, and if so, I'm definitely going to link that down below. I'm going to link the author's website down below anyway, because I would like all of you to go buy that book immediately, because it's really, really good. I mean, obviously, if you know, none of what I said sounded interesting to you, maybe consider not doing that to yourself. But right now, it's only available as an audiobook, and it's really not that expensive, and we love supporting indie authors, and we also love supporting queer gothic dystopian novels, because they're fantastic. I had a great time. I had a great time with this book. Again, I'm trying not to give too many spoilers here. There's also some very hot scenes. For anyone who has read it, I'm specifically talking about the theater scene. Thank you. That's very important to me personally. But at the end of the day, I think what Matthew Zachary created here is an absolute masterpiece of gothic dystopian fiction that works so well with all of the like elements it wants to combine, including but not limited to the magic system and how everything is viewed there and how everything works there. And I keep talking about the magic system, but I am so fascinated by how magic and language and the need for authority over, like interact and interlock into the magic system that Matthew Zachary has created. It's so good. Genuinely, one of my favorite aspects of this novel was exactly that. Everything else, you know, was also great, but that part just made me go, oh, this is my thing. This is down my alley. So, yes, once more, I would like to thank Matthew for giving me access to an e-arc of this book. I also bought a, you know, digital copy again because, of course I did. And I highly encourage everyone to do the same because, again, it's just so good. But thank you so much for the early access I got to this book. I had an absolute blast. I loved it. And I hope that more people get to love it too, the way that I did. So, yes, go buy the book, go support Matthew, go have fun, go support more indie authors as well, because we need them very badly. But, as always, I hope that your reading experience is good and will also, you know, remain good, that you will keep having a good, nice reading experience. And I will see you soon.